You're listening to Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions on product and business strategy. And now, here's your host, Bob Caporelli.
Welcome to another episode of Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions about product and business strategy. Real questions from real people in real companies, just like yours. Welcome back, strategy creators. We have another great episode, of course, coming for you today. But before we get there, just another quick shout out for the company that sponsors this show, the company that I work for, the company that I founded, Strategy Generation Company. We offer training and tools and resources, coaching for strategy creators in companies large and small in all different types of industries. We hope you'll go check out some of our tools and resources and workshops that we offer by visiting strategygeneration.com. If you're part of a team or an individual who just wants to learn more about strategy, please go and check that out and see if we have something that might be of interest to you. So again, strategygeneration.com. So this week is really a continuation of last week's discussion. There are two separate questions from two separate individuals, but they both are around this idea of executing a strategy. Last week, we answered a question that we really focused mainly on executing your strategy inside your company. So how do you turn a plan into something that you can invest in and something that you can keep going as far as a life cycle inside of your own company? And so we gave some advice on how to do that on last week's episode. This week, we're going to focus really on the same thing. How do you execute a strategy, but more on outside of your company, which tends to be, in my opinion, a little bit more difficult and a little bit more challenging. So the official question is, Dear Strategy, you could have the best strategy, but what are some best practices to implement it effectively? So you can see this question is really kind of more geared towards, look, you already have your plan. How do you make it happen? And I'm going to really focus this one outside of our organization because that's, again, where it gets to be a little bit more challenging. And so I'm going to go ahead and kind of answer this question through the lens of the fact that most people want to have that breakthrough strategy, right? In almost all the companies I go into, that's what they're looking for, the disruptive strategies, the things that no one else has done before, the breakthrough products, the Amazon type products, the Apple type products, right? The Google type products, the things that nobody else even dared to dream of. That's what most companies want. And the fact is that most companies don't get that. And the reason for that, at least in my humble opinion, is because I believe it takes a very, very unique and special mindset to think of the world in an unconstrained way. And I don't know, by the way, that I fall into this category. I don't think most of us do. So I'm talking from not a standpoint of a visionary like Steve Jobs, right? I'm talking from the standpoint of just about every other business person I've ever met who maybe overplans or overthinks or really tends to be focused as much on what can't be done as what can be done. I consider myself to be kind of a guy who's focused on vision, right? I'm focused on the future, but I don't know that I would consider myself a visionary because I think when somebody is a visionary thinker or a visionary leader, it's somebody who doesn't think about the barriers, right? They don't think about what can't be done. It's just about what can be done. And the greatest minds, the greatest leaders of the greatest companies, that's the kind of characteristic that you see. And that's not so easy to do. When we talk about executing a strategy inside of our company, we're talking about getting the funding, getting the resources, getting the approvals, right? But it's still very much a plan. It's still very much something that, okay, we're all aligned, but we now still have to go do it in the marketplace. And have we really put something in place that's going to be completely out there, right? And like kind of throw it to the wind. Don't worry about all the negative things that could happen. Don't worry about the fact that you could lose money. Very few companies put together strategies like that, right? But those that do, those are the ones that have the most success or go broke. It could go either way, which is why a lot of people don't do it. But at the end of the day, it's that kind of unconstrained thinking that's really interesting. I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, great podcast, of course. And I was listening to the episode with Elon Musk, me and just about everybody else in the world who listened to that podcast episode. And the reason it got so much press was because, they took a little snippet near the end where he took a puff of a marijuana joint. And of course, that got all of the press and, most of it negative. And so everybody tuned in to hear that. And it was literally, 3 minutes of the episode, completely insignificant. And everything else that this man was saying was completely ignored. Well, I listened to the whole thing, I don't know, 2 hours or something like that. But there were so many great things that he said. But here's one of the things that struck me, and I kind of want to share this piece of it. Highly recommend, by the way, if you haven't listened to it, go check it out. It's a very, very popular podcast, and you'll find the Elon Musk episode. But here's basically what the part that I just loved. Joe Rogan at one point asked Elon Musk about his Boring Company. And those of you who are not familiar with his Boring Company, one of Elon Musk's visions is that, there's huge traffic problems everywhere, particularly in LA. And, if we want to solve those problems, we could either go up or down, right? And the more realistic way is to go down. So dig tunnels, and that will, alleviate these traffic problems. Pretty intuitive, makes some sense. But of course, Joe Rogan asked the same question that would have been on my mind, which is, you have this idea to build a tunnel, right? And he was going to build a tunnel from the company's parking lot to some other location, some miles away. And Joe Rogan asked, how do you even conceive of getting like all of the different approvals and permits and permissions that you would need to dig a hole like that? And Elon Musk's response, I'll never get it out of my head. He basically, he responded with puzzlement. Like he didn't understand the question, and even said that he goes, I don't understand. And Joe Rogan kind of clarified, like, I think it's a pretty obvious question, how do you get past the barriers? There's got to be a million barriers in the way of needing to build a tunnel from one place to another in LA, of all places. And his response again was, he was puzzled, and he said, "What? We dug a hole. People dig holes all the time." And I'm paraphrasing, I'm summarizing. I don't know that I'm quoting directly, but again, go listen to the episode. It happens kind of towards the beginning of it, so it's you don't have to even listen to the whole thing. But I was just amazed by that, because I listened to that and I said, man, that takes a different kind of a mind, right? Like there's no barriers in his mind. It literally is like, this is a solution to a very real problem. So we dig a hole and then we figure it out, right? And I just thought, like, I don't think that most of us are wired that way. And I don't know the man, obviously, just only what I've read and heard and seen. But to me, if I was faced with that kind of an idea, and I've had a million great, innovative ideas, I start immediately thinking of, well, this can't be done and that can't be done. It's going to cost too much. We get too many approvals, and no one's going to let me dig a hole, and no one's going to let me do that. And no one's going to let me do this. And the idea is you never get off of first base, right? You never get started because you start thinking of all the things that can't be done. And a lot of those are probably true. They're probably real barriers, but they're in many ways also fake barriers from the standpoint that they're just regulations that have been put in place by people. And minds like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and, all the other great, thinkers and entrepreneurs, I really believe that they have a wiring that allows them to see past that and think past what can't be done and only think towards what can be done. And that's just a unique mindset. Now, I only bring this up not because I think that we're all going to be able to change to that. I really think that's a wiring that's kind of, you have or you don't, right? You're kind of born with it or you're not. But I think using examples like that, we maybe all can take a little bit more on like that. Yes, you have to think about, both sides, what can be done and what can't be done. But it's a matter of balance. Which way are you going to balance? Are you going to think about what can be done over what can't be done? Or are you going to go the opposite way? And I think that that's the difference between some strategies being really successfully implemented and some not. And I've seen this on a much smaller scale than the Elon Musks of the world. Like I've seen this in other entrepreneurs where, people that are not completely, risk takers even, but they're able to say, well, anything could be done. And they just kind of start going out there, right? They jump out onto the battlefield and they're like, I'm going to figure it out. And I think that there's something to be said about that. So I'm a big proponent, obviously, of planning. I'm a big proponent of having a strategy. And obviously, you know that. But I think there's something to be said about, even when you have the best of plans, don't let yourself be limited by all the things that can't be done. Sometimes you have to take that plan and say, okay, it's my best plan. Now I'm just going to go and I'm going to figure out things along the way. And it's not going to go exactly as planned, and it's not going to go exactly the way that I thought it would, but I'm going to figure it out as I go. And everyone's going to have a different risk tolerance. You know, some people will feel very irresponsible if they just go out there without any plan at all. And I would agree with that. But the idea is, don't think about too much what can't be done. Don't think about every eventuality that might happen that could be negative. Sometimes you have to trust your plan enough to say, you know what, it's a good plan and I have a good solution and I need to go and just make it happen. And I think that's going to be what's going to allow you to implement your strategy effectively in the marketplace. Break down those barriers, be a little bit less constrained. I'm trying, right? I'm trying. I have to tell you, I'm still working on that for myself and even for my own business. But I think we could all take a little bit of just a small page out of the books of the people that I named, and see if we can't take on a little bit of that really open-minded thinking. So that's where I'm going to go here. Maybe not a direct answer, but definitely a topic that I wanted to cover. So I hope it's helpful or at least inspiring. So again, if you have a question you want to be featured on the show, go out and visit us at dearstrategy.net or dearstrategy.com. They both work. Click on the Ask a Question link and you could ask a question to be featured on the show. Also, please go and visit us at Strategy Generation Company. We can be found at strategygeneration.com. And I know you'll find a lot of tools and resources and great things that you could take advantage of there. And while you're doing all that, don't forget to make time for the plan. And we'll see you back here on another episode of Dear Strategy. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for listening to Dear Strategy with Bob Caparelli. To learn more or to submit a question to be featured on our show, please visit us at dearstrategy.net.